Ba-da, 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 ba-ba-ba. Is this ringing any bells?
No.
Ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-da, ba-ba-da, ba-ba.
No bells, but
Ba-da, ba-ba-ba-da, ba-da, ba-ba-da, ba-da, ba-da, ba-ba. Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. All right. Welcome to another episode of New Cool, the wide flank show where Sean and Alon bring each other a play-adjacent topic that's cool to one of us and new to the other, or new to one of us and cool to the other, or new and cool to both of us and all of us in the wide flank world. Let's get the admin stuff out of the way and then on to the play. Come on down to the wide flank Discord. Come on down to the wide flank Patreon. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pocket Casts or wherever you listen. We're as beholden to the algorithm as anyone. But more than that, tell a friend. Hey, you got any friends who like to play? Alon?
or
How you doing?
listen to play or play with listening.
Sure.
I'm good. How are you?
Don't get me started.
Okay.
Don't get me started.
Okay.
No,
I might have to.
I'm good. I'm excited to be recording with you today. I've got a topic that has been long percolating. How are you feeling about your topic? Don't tell me what the topic is, but how are you feeling about it?
I'm nervous that it's a little bit too much of a rabbit hole. I feel like I don't have like a central thesis or really a conclusion about it. It's just like, here's a bunch of thought barf and maybe you'll find something interesting there. But that's also okay. We're learning how to do these, right?
So what you're telling me is it's a podcast.
Yeah, it's a podcast. Yeah, it's a podcast.
Oh, let's take those podcast fat cats down a peg, right? Am I right? Okay. On to the topics.
You're starting this month, right? Because I started last month.
That's true. Here we go.
Sean, what do you got for us?
So, my topic for today is New Cool is Suikalikes. Yeah?
Never heard of it. No idea what that is.
Beautiful. That's the name of the New Cool game. So, for starters, I want to tell you about a game called Underwatermelon Fruit Merge. Let that one sink in. Underwatermelon Fruit Merge.
It's wild. Okay.
Now, so if we have a listener who like already knows what a Suika game is, they're like, yeah, Underwatermelon Fruit Merge. Like they're with it.
Yeah.
But the point is, and I'll tell it to you. So I was sitting on the couch pretty recently and I'm scrolling through Netflix. Are you familiar with Netflix?
Familiar. Never played Netflix games. Don't really know how it works, but I know that they have games and people are psyched about it.
Well, do you have access to the like cloud Netflix games on your streaming device? Do you happen to know?
Don't know.
Okay. So okay. It's a Netflix cloud gaming game, which Alon has already referenced, and which is a whole black hole unto itself, as we just started to see.
Almost went there, yeah.
And to that same point, I'm glad that Alon, during his little bit of the intro, was like, what was the language you used? You didn't say black hole, or did you?
Rabbit hole, I think.
Rabbit hole. Sean's black hole is Alon's rabbit hole. But yeah, so Netflix cloud gaming is a whole black hole unto itself that I'm almost positive we'll return to in a later New Cool.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. But to refocus, Underwatermelon Fruit Merge is a game developed by Next Games, which is an internal game development studio at Netflix.
Okay.
It was released in June of 2024. And it's a game where on the left side of the screen, the player holds an octopus who's doing are you familiar with the DreamWorks eyebrow?
No.
It's like this.
Okay.
It's like a meme
I would call that the rock eyebrow.
Well, sure. Maybe it's a derivative of the rock. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a generational thing, but yeah, that's the rock.
Yeah, time goes by so quickly.
Yeah.
So there's an octopus doing the rock eyebrow. And you're looking at a what do they call it? What do they call it in Tetris? The play space of Tetris.
The rectangle. I don't know what that. There's probably a name for that, but I don't know what it is.
The alley.
The lane. The level. The mat.
It's like a vertical. Yeah, it's a vertical mat, and like
everyone knows Tetris, so I think everyone kind of understands. Yeah.
Netflix, Tetris. These are a few of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So it's a game where you're looking at a Tetris style gutter.
Sure.
And it's a vertical oriented game where you're launching fruit upwards, and it starts, and on the right side of the screen you see a circle with like an implied relationship between fruit.
I think I've played this.
Oh yeah?
At our friend Josh's. I think I played this fruit game. But go on.
Yeah?
Keep going.
Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. And so it's a game where you start with small fruit and you blast them up, and you combine smaller fruit into bigger fruit, and then the bigger fruit combined into the bigger fruit.
Yeah.
It's a game where you're constantly stacking these like little objects that like create a relationship with each other, and there's a lot of physics in the game. Not a lot of physics, but the physics is part of the design too, because like the fruit will roll around. It's I'm not especially familiar with 2048. Are you?
No, it hasn't even happened yet.
In my research, the 2048 kept coming up. I think that's a game for phones where you like combine numbers, and it's like 1 + 1, 2 + 2.
Oh, yeah. Damon. I know,
4.
like Damon played a lot of that. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah.
It's
a puzzle game where you have to make multiples of something to clear it, or you're trying to make the highest number. I guess that's a difference between a Suika and like a Snood or Puzzle Bobble or whatever.
Totally.
You're trying to make things bigger instead of like remove things, or Tetris even. Instead of in those games, you're trying to remove things and like clear the board, right?
Yeah, it's like these are different game designs that use like matching in different ways. I'm glad you brought up the Puzzle Bobble thing, because I like was considering bringing it up, but was like, do we have time to go down the rabbit hole of whether we're both privy to Puzzle Bobble?
I know it.
Black holes upon. So you know
Black
it. So yeah,
sun.
it's. What'd you say?
Black hole sun.
Don't you come?
Yeah.
So it's a game where that's basically the design of the game, and the goal is you want to make a watermelon. So that's where the watermelon in the title comes from. The theming of the octopus is where the underwater comes from. It's like it's a loose.
Yeah, it's very loose. You can't just plop an octopus in Counter-Strike and call it an underwater FPS game. You know what I'm saying, brother?
I mean, hey, I mean, that's, oh my gosh, I don't want to get ahead of the conclusion.
Okay.
I don't want to get ahead of the conclusion, but it's like, why not? Why wouldn't we be able to plop a watermelon, plop an octopus in Counter-Strike and call it an underwater?
You're right.
Yeah. So that's underwater melon fruit merge. And I had a question. You've already answered my question, which was, have you heard of Suika game? Are you familiar with Suika game?
And my answer would have been no, but as I'm like slightly Googling on the side, and then you were describing it, I was like, yeah, I played that game. I made some fruit, but I never like got to watermelon. I mean, it's hard to get to watermelon. It's hard to like roll the fruits in a way that you need to make them connect to create the next biggest fruit. It's a hard game. Yeah, it's a fun puzzle game.
It's super fun. It's super dynamic. You're constantly creating situations for yourself where like you see your mistake and you're like, dang it all to H.
That persimmon.
Exactly. And in Tetris, there's an analog in Tetris, which is the one like empty square that you've stacked on top of. And like there's so much satisfaction that comes with like, all right, I cleared up the mess that I've made.
Yeah.
Like, So, all right. So that's Under Watermelon. Now I'm going to tell you about a game called Suikalikes. And Suikalikes is a game developed by Alon and Sean, which was released in April of 2021.
Okay.
And it was originally developed as a preloaded game for their pop-in digital projector, which is a black hole unto itself.
Crazy.
Alon and Sean is not a game development studio. They make projectors, but like I said, it's a black hole. Later that year, it was released on the Nintendo Switch, and it only started to pop off like in 2023. And by November 2023, it had sold over 4 million copies.
What?
It was, yeah.
Wow.
Suikalikes is big business.
Yeah, I didn't know that. It felt like the way that you guys presented it to me when I played that one time was just kind of like, here's this unknown like indie game that like no one's ever played or heard of, and I was like, oh, this is cute and cool. I had no idea that it like popped off in any way.
Well, I think it's like kind of fundamentally niche because like it's essentially like a Japanese game, and like a lot of like VTubers I think picked it up and were streaming it.
Okay.
In preparing for this episode, I looked into what the numbers for Twitch Suikalikes were like last night, and it was 28 viewers.
Wow.
But
not that good.
39.6 thousand followers.
Wow.
And I think that ratio communicates the like how would you even describe like the transient transience of the game, which another black hole. So it sold hella good, and Suikalikes to the unfamiliar is a game where you start with a small fruit and you're dropping fruit down a Tetris style gutter, but you're coming. It's vertically oriented and you're coming from the top.
That's the one I've played. Where you're dropping fruits down. Yeah.
And it's not to explain the punchline, but it is the same design as Under Watermelon. And like Under Watermelon is very clearly a derivative of Suikalikes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's the design of that game. And to that point, so there are many Suikalikes because this was this like viral sensation game, and as like a lot of those types of games go, a lot of versions with barely different design and often enough completely different physics. Our friend we reference friends of the pod pretty often, don't we?
I like them.
We love those people.
The High Council and just friends. Yeah.
We love friends. So one of our friends, the friend who one of the friends we played with, John, he would like right away he tried to download some of those Suikalikes that were available on the phone, and right away he was like, the physics are all wrong. And it was like, the physics, but that's what it is. It's like the game is like such a specific arrangement of like design and physics that like when it's off, you like immediately feel it.
This is like, I don't know, too black holy and too rabbit holy, but I was going to talk about like the fact that every new game has a million clones on like mobile nowadays, but this is like a different rabbit hole that actually, while I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't even want to bring this up or talk about it. Keep continuing with John.
That's why they call it a rabbit hole or a black hole. No, I'm done, and I'm done with John.
Bye, John.
Bye, John. So there's a lot of different derivatives of this game. Like some of them you're stacking planets, some of them you're stacking cats' heads, some of them you're stacking pastries.
Yeah.
Most of them you're literally just stacking the fruit. Like it's just like overtly
a clone. Yeah.
A clone. They litter the App Store, the Google Play Store, Steam, the Microsoft Store. So Under Watermelon Fruit Merge just happens to be the most recent iteration that I've encountered.
Okay.
So the question I want to pose to you, and perhaps to the wide flank listener, is like, when does a format become codified? Like, when does a game transition from like a distinct design to like a thing that's cloned. Like, when is a clone unique? Did you get what I'm saying? Like, where is the line between imitation and iteration?
Right. Yeah, I don't know, but that's a really interesting thing to think about. So what makes what is the name? Underwater watermelon merge?
The brand recognition is weak.
It's hard to say.
It feels like it doesn't matter because it's just like an internally developed Netflix. Like, it matters to like probably the team at Next Games who are like Netflix employees.
But I was going to say, what makes that game that I can't pronounce and don't remember the name of different from Suika, or different enough from Suika that it might be not necessarily a clone, but its own game?
So the first one is kind of cheap and like ultimately kind of nonsensical. It's that it's flipped. Suika game is you're dropping fruit into a bucket. This game is you're launching fruit up.
That doesn't seem like enough to me.
No, there's like actually one design choice that I will explain shortly that like is like kind of significantly different. That's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like more than just the rock octopus.
Yeah. Rocktopus.
Rocktopus. I was gonna start saying some shit about the B-52s, Rock Lobster. Are we there? Tell
me about the design choice.
So and I just wanted to run my mouth a little bit about like part of how Suika games and like the player perception of the physics is that like it is gravity oriented. It's like when the fruit are rolling around, it's because like gravity is affecting the fruit.
Yeah.
In Underwatermelon, it's like it's just the gravity is reversed. Like they still roll around, but it's just like above. So your brain kind of just has to like
get used to it. It's like being underwater and the flute's floating upwards. Hello.
I didn't even. Yo, that's trippy.
Yeah.
No, but truly, I didn't even consider that. Like that's
what
good.
it is.
That's good. Maybe Underwatermelon. I'm not even saying Underwatermelon's bad, but it's like I had that snippy little critique of it, but it's like, you're absolutely right. Maybe they could have telegraphed it with like bubbles to make it clear.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice. You would like some bubbles and like light at the top to know that you're underwater and up is where the light
think like
is.
the visual design, like there is like, you see that you're in the water, but it's just like, there's something about like when you're looking at the design as opposed to the aesthetics, it's like, this is another black hole. But I think with video games, like often enough, there's a tendency to like forego aesthetics because you're really into the design or vice versa. That could be a whole new cool unto itself. So I'm going to lock it down.
So tell me about this design decision. I'm dying for it, Jerry.
It's gold.
It's gold, Jerry. It's better than anything you got.
Okay, Vanya. Okay. Wow. The design thing that like truly sets Underwatermelon apart from Suika game is that like it's a stage oriented game, such that this is something I didn't describe about Suika game. Suika game is you're literally stacking fruit and like there's kind of a cap to the play because like the fruit never actually I think the fruit wipe entirely when you match 2 watermelon. But like that's
impossible.
That's nuts. Yeah, like that does not occur in like ordinary play.
It's not even clearing the board. To me, that's beating the game.
Sure.
Like you beat the game when you do that, and the only option is to try another game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like it's I think the implication is like you can just keep stacking. And I think that's the thing is like Underwatermelon motivates the player to like keep playing in a way where I'll just describe it straight up.
Yeah.
It's stage oriented such that like when you hit a certain point, it'll tell it like there's like a counter on the screen of like drop this many fruit until, and when you hit that 0 point, it's like the top springs open and the fruit just sort of tumble down.
Whoa.
And it like exactly, like the physics just sort of like redesign the fruit layout that you've been playing with, and often enough it's like, oh shit, it got that cherry I was stuck with.
Yeah.
And like it actually feels like a meaningful design distinction because it's like more of an interplay between player and game in a way. Like it's like the game is like taking care of my mistakes. It's a good feeling. I love, if it's not clear, I like Underwater Melon.
I think you like both games, and they
I'm
both
not
sound
coming.
great.
Yeah. So, and before I forget to say it, because we're wrapping up pretty soon, but before I forget to say it, I just wanted to invoke the notion of Doom clones, because like the actual like thought-provoking question of Underwater Melon and Suikalikes is like, what is the line between limitation and iteration? When does a format become codified? In the early 90s, like after the release of Doom, the games that we now call first-person shooters were like called Doom clones.
All of them were called Doom clones, no matter how similar or dissimilar they were. Like if you had a gun and it was or if you had anything that like killed an enemy, it doesn't have to be even a gun. Yeah. And I'm just thinking this now, like it's interesting that they weren't called Wolfenstein clones, you know, like Doom, and because like there's a design lineage between Wolfenstein and Doom. It's in software. It's like the same designers, but it's like the popularity of Doom is kind of what made it like that's the thing to be cloned, right?
And I think that's like kind of relevant to what we're talking about too. I think that like once a game design hits a certain level of ubiquity, it's like everyone's copying it. But I don't even have the answers for like.
Yeah. No, keep going. You don't have the answers.
I don't know. You keep coming to me looking for answers. I don't have the answers for like when does something become a format as opposed to just like a very obvious cash grab derivation that has like advertisements pumped into it on the App Store.
Right.
Like it boggles the mind.
Yeah, that's really an interesting question, because I think in all media, I don't really have examples on the tip of my tongue, but you know, even in like music,
that's what I was going to say.
There's going to be a song or a band or whatever, a producer that makes a thing that sort of is like, oh my, this is dubstep. And then, you know, for a long time, everything that is like remotely in the sphere is like, oh, this is like, I mean, people don't say, oh, this is a Skrillex like, but everyone's just gonna be like, oh, this is basically Skrillex or whatever. You know, this is like a genre. But eventually that stops and we kind of have like the clarity to look back and be like, no, that's not really what that was. Like, this is this, and this is in this category, and this is deriving from this. So these are all different. But in the moment, I think for ease of like, I mean, part of it is just ease of like conversation, right? Like I can like easily describe Quake to you if I'm like, it's kind of like Doom, but like, you know, more modern, you know, and then you have some frame of reference to be able to be like, oh, I like Doom. Like maybe I want to check that out.
And I would argue that the push and pull there then becomes like how like if someone doesn't know what Quake is, then like maybe you're forced to describe like, oh, it's a game where it's like a first person perspective.
Yeah.
And you're shooting a gun.
Yeah.
Because it's I as I was describing Quake, I set aside like describing the aesthetics of Quake, because it's like it doesn't matter that it's set in a castle. Of course it matters, but not to like a normal conversation.
Yeah, and the thing that you run into is like if I was trying to explain Quake to someone who didn't know about Quake in the 90s, they would just be like, oh, a Doom clone.
Exactly.
You know, like it wouldn't even be like worth my time trying to describe it. I'd be like, it's a Doom clone, but it's like in a castle, a little faster, a little, you know, there's a rail gun or whatever. But like,
totally. And there's one more thing. My time is up. There's one more thing I want to say.
Yeah,
I want to tell you about one more game named Synthetic Big Watermelon.
Okay.
Synthetic Big Watermelon is a game developed by Beijing Midu Technology Corporation Limited. It was released in January of 2021. So let's just do a quick review. Let's do a quick review because nobody's going to recall all these dates.
I already forgot all of them.
Underwatermelon Fruit Merge, June of 2024. Suika Game, April of 2021.
Synthetic Watermelon.
Synthetic Big Watermelon, January of 2021.
So it's the OG.
So 40 million people played it in mainland China.
Oh my
Like,
God.
I gave you the 4 million number of Suika game, which was already bonko. 40 million players in China of synthetic big watermelon. So, and there's some sort of advertising fraud associated with the game, which is a black hole unto itself. And what I want to leave us with is, so maybe we shouldn't be calling them Suikalikes. Maybe we should be calling them synthetic big watermelon likes.
Stolen from China likes.
Everything. I don't want to quote a Primus song.
Do it. I don't care.
There's a Primus song where it's just Les Claypool going like, everything's made in China. We're going to cut that out.
No, we're going to put drop the music in there with a little bass slap or something like that.
We'll get fucking
Seinfeld bass.
Yeah. Beautiful. I didn't even mention the music of Suika game, but it'll appear. Is this ringing any bells?
No. No bells, but
all right. That's my section for this week.
Love it,
this
dude.
month's New Cool. Hell
great
yeah.
topic.
Two things that
something to play, something to think about. I love that.
Yeah, I don't want to gas up Netflix. They don't need it. But if you have a Netflix account, you can probably play Underwater Melon right now.
And if you don't, I'm sure there's a not as good free mobile game you could just download and just sit on the subway and try for 20 minutes,
It's all fine. Like we have our favorite games, but like whatever works.
And we'll link to the games. Whatever you have, you should just check out.
In the show notes, it'll just say netflix.com.
Love that.
That's Suikalikes for you, folks. All right, Alon, what do you got? What do you got for me?
Okay, here's what I got. Tournaments.
I know about those.
It's wide. It's really wide in the theme of wide flank. So much of what I pay attention to are tournaments. Esports, sports, games, stuff I follow, stuff I like to participate in. And I just think that tournament structure and tournament format are often very overlooked in terms of, the importance to the participants, but also the enjoyment and pleasure of the spectators. Mm-hmm. The reason I think it was on the tip of my tongue is there's a new tournament format in soccer, what's called the Champions League. And I think it stinks. And we just, it's only been one round. So maybe, a few months from now, I'll be like, actually, that was good. But
well, can you describe what is the form?
So what they changed to, they're calling Swiss, but it's incorrect. It's not a Swiss type of tournament. I don't know if you're familiar with Swiss, but we can dive into all the common types.
I don't know anything about soccer. Alon thinks about soccer 23 hours a day.
No, but Swiss is just a tournament format. It's used in chess and esports, and it's used in lots of different tournaments.
It's not a soccer thing.
It's a soccer thing.
Tournament.
It's a tournament format. But they call it Swiss, but it's actually not. So what they're doing in the soccer thing is more of like a pot system, is what people are calling it, which is basically every competitor. And I'll just use the soccer as the example so I can say like team, so it makes more sense. But every team is divided into different pots, and that's a predetermined ranking, basically. So like the best teams are in pot A, the second best teams are in pot B, and it goes A, B, C, D. Basically, that's all you need to know. And then it's a random draw of who all of your opponents will be. And you play someone from each pot.
Oh.
So every pot A team plays against a different pot A team, one team from B. Well, in soccer's case, 2 teams from B, 2 teams from C, 2 teams from D.
How is a team designated pot A, for instance?
That's just like not interesting technical shit of like,
Okay.
where they finished in the league and have the strength of their domestic leagues rating in the UEFA ranking. It's all this shit.
Maybe a more direct, like not even more direct, but just like, is pot A better than pot B, or like
Pot A is the stronger teams.
Okay, sure.
Basically, is how it's divided, and that goes D being the weakest team. So they're usually from really smaller leagues that don't regularly have some of the best teams, or they're like new to qualifying for this tournament, so they're considered like, oh, we don't know how well they'll do, whatever. Point is, the pot system is fine, but
you're mad.
I'm not
you
mad.
You hate this.
I'm not.
You
I'm not.
hate this. Oh wait, no, you don't. What's the continue.
What is it? What is it?
The pot system is fine. Sorry,
I guess I just sound aggressive, but I don't mean to be. But
you said something stinks. I still don't know.
The new system. Well, here's why I don't like the new system. Because in the old system and the new system, what happens is, some teams qualify for then what becomes a single elimination tournament, like a bracket style tournament that we all know. Like the most common type of tournament, right? So
March Madness, which I almost called Monthly Madness.
Monthly Madness, as they call it.
Wait, so like, what is single elimination?
Single elimination is a bracket where you play one against one person or one team at a time. You win and you move on. You lose and you're out. Simplest form there is, and then eventually, there's one team or a person that's undefeated versus another that's undefeated in the finals, and the winner of that wins the whole thing.
Sure, and that reflects like a March Madness bracket.
March Madness, exactly.
Elimination. It's just like a straight line,
exactly.
Like,
and there's definitely like cons. It's not like perfect, like it's really short. You might fly to Japan for a third strike tournament and lose in the first round, and then you're like, hey, I just spent like $2,000 on my trip to Japan, and this sucks.
Now I'm just in Japan.
Oh no!
I hate this.
And it's more volatile. It's more random, right? Because you say you're the second best third strike player in the world. You might get drawn against the first best third strike player in the world in the first round and immediately get knocked out, even though you're second best, right? So,
but it's also, this is how like people come out of nowhere though, right? Where it's just like nobody cared about like this player can't. I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's called the Cinderella story in March Madness. Yeah, because it is volatile. It's right. It's 12th ranked team randomly is like, oh, they're actually good and they're beating all these better teams. But that would only exist in this format because you'd imagine if the rankings are correct in any way that like the first ranked team would beat the 12th ranked team in a longer series of some sort. Right? Like the first best third strike player will beat the 20th best third strike player if they played best of 7. They would probably win like 99% of the time.
Yeah,
but in
win 4 times in a row.
Right, but the shorter the format, the more volatile it is, because you could just like randomly, I just hit this combo one time. That's insane, right? Or like in a basketball game, like Sean was just shooting lights out. Sean hit 6 threes out of nowhere in the third quarter, and they just won. And that's
I'm so good at basketball.
You're so good at basketball. But yeah, that's single limb. I'm going off the rails. Right, so there's 36 Champions League teams. It goes down to a number, and then they play in a single elimination tournament. The pot system is just it makes for a lot of matches that don't matter, which is a big problem with a lot of different tournament structures. And it usually, in general, makes for the better teams have a more likely chance to go through, because it doesn't really matter what they do when they play against the other better teams. As long as they beat the bad teams, they'll be fine and they'll qualify for the tournament.
Weird. Okay.
Which begs the question: why
do it at all?
What's the point of any tournament? which is kind of like where I was this is where my like brain went to when I was thinking about like what should my topic be. And I think there's a few things that are just like sort of every tournament has to consider, and then you adjust them based on, who's running the tournament basically. But the number one thing I think that every tournament does is to see who's the best at the thing for that day or for that season, right? So, a Smash tournament, who's the best Smash player on the day? That's basically the goal, right?
It's like a structure for organizing. It's a structure for organizing an event.
Right,
like
exactly. A competitive play. The number two thing, or I don't know if there's an order for this, but the next thing is it has to be an enjoyable, good experience for the competitors and the players, right? So meaning it has to be safe, like physically and mentally, right? We can't have like, okay, you guys can't go to sleep. You have to play for 48 straight hours, right? Like that's not okay.
That'd be cool.
It sounds kind of cool for like a post-apocalyptic movie, maybe.
You ever hear about Hands on a Hard Body?
No.
It's this competition where people just have to stand and put their hands on a pickup truck, and whoever is the last person touching the truck gets the truck.
Yeah, see, that's bad.
It goes for like 35 hours.
They're just like pooping in their pants, and that's like that's not good.
No?
I don't think so. The tournament also has to feel fair. Otherwise, again, the people participating in it won't want to participate, right? If they just feel I got completely screwed, this wasn't fair, like,
Yeah, which that's bringing to mind two things for me. One of which is like, as you were describing this whole pot system, I was like, yeah, like what optimistically, maybe it's like a D seed team will like have some like the A team won't know about their strategies because like they're the underdog and they don't even think about their strategies. Yeah. But the other thought is like, there's often enough when I'm looking at the March Madness style brackets where it's like, well, that person lost out so early on. Like, how would they have competed with this person that's on a different scale of it? Like, it's not a perfect system.
Yes,
right?
And which like is kind of teasing my conclusion, but I think it's totally fine to bring up now, which is that there is no perfect system, and I think every game and sport and competition requires like this hardcore analysis of like what suits this game or sport. So the next thing that every tournament is, and the next and maybe last thing that every tournament has to think about to a different degree is the entertainment of the spectator.
Sure.
You want it to be hype. You want it to be exciting. You want it to be dramatic. You want it to, right? So that opens up Pandora's box because, if it's
a black hole,
you might say, if it's a local Street Fighter tournament and it's just, 12 people there, that's one thing. You just want it to be hype and fun and everyone to have a fun time. But if it's, billions of euros and it's a Champions League tournament, then like you want the best teams to qualify, even if it feels unfair because the TV rights want it. They want numbers watching Barcelona play. They don't want like random Czech Republic team to qualify that no one is going to watch or care about, right? And
because it's like an implied audience kind of
exactly.
that like already exists for these teams.
Yeah, the most hyped up, biggest market teams get more viewers. It's just a fact. So, that's another consideration that like depending on who your audience is and who your like financial backers are, you might have to, factor into your tournament, which is like
soccer.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like shitty. I don't like, for me, I enjoy the game. I enjoy upsets. I'm interested no matter what. But for just the casual fan, they're just not gonna get out of their seats if Real Madrid isn't in the last, in the later stages of the tournament. Like they lose interest if Real Madrid gets knocked out.
That's a good team.
Yeah, they're like a most famous team who's won the most Champions Leagues with mega famous players, yada, yada. So yeah, that's kind of my rant, but there's tons of different types of tournaments. We have friends who play Third Strike tournaments, Guilty Gear tournaments, Smash tournaments. I watch sports, which are all sorts of different types of like hybrid tournaments.
Can I run my mouth a little bit?
Please.
As soon as you say tournament, you know where my brain goes? I think we both know
Unreal tournament.
Unreal tournament.
I knew it.
Yeah. Which, like, ironically enough, that's a game that you've told me you never played in a competitive way at all, because it is like a very playful. The tournament in that game is like far more aesthetic.
Yes.
It's like, this game is a tournament in a effed up future.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
whatever. But yeah, I just wanted to say Unreal Tournament on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it has to be mentioned because it's great, and maybe a future game club or something. But, hey now.
So, but what were you saying about like the notion of like tournaments as they apply to these like other, like the third, like the third strike? Because you were talking about like local tournaments and how like, if it's a small enough player base, any tournament can be good. But if it's like a broader entertainment spectacle, like the needs of the tournament, is that what you were getting at? Kind of,
yeah, just kind
why were
of
you starting to talk about games, like video games.
I think that's what I was kind of getting at. But that, you know, in the beginning of the episode, you asked how I feel about my topic. This is why I was kind of like, there's something there, but I don't actually know what it is. So we'll see.
Like when does it end?
Yeah, exactly. Because there are all these different types of tournaments. So what I have written down, for example, are single limb, double limb, round robin, Swiss, pot, and then a lot of these formats rather start with one and then go to another. So I don't know if you're familiar. I'll just use the big four American sports as an example.
The big four,
which is NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL.
Really?
Football,
hockey beats FIFA?
Well, in the US, yeah. Hockey's more popular than MLS.
Really?
But yeah, NHL's still kicking.
That's weird.
But
doesn't matter.
all of these sports, the way the American sports work is there's a regular season, which you might also reframe as like it's essentially just a long qualifying for the playoffs. Like the point in all of the sports is to qualify for the playoffs. And then the playoffs are it's a reference that you won't get, but anyone who watches sports might.
Cool.
The playoffs are a single elimination bracket, right? You win, you move on, you lose, you go home. So yeah, American sports are these weird hybrids where it's basically a multi-stage tournament, right? So the regular season is a group tournament where everyone plays a predetermined number of matches or games or whatever. And then that acts as qualifying for the postseason or the playoffs, which is a single elimination tournament. Right. So that's common because there's a lot of teams. So every team probably shouldn't be playing every other team. The season would be too long. It'd be too demanding for the games. But Americans have this idea that but there has to be a winner. There has to be a champion, right? There has to be like the Super Bowl trophy.
The best. It's American exceptionalism as born out in game design.
It is actually. It totally is. So there has to be a playoff. And the playoffs is now we do the intense, dramatic, volatile tournament that determines this is the best team and they win the championship. But
I wanna stop you there to be like this year, today, because it's it is this sort of thing that it just goes on and on.
Yes.
It's and maybe that's something about how sports and games work, that it's it is this thing that's replicatable and repeatable and it goes on and on, but at a certain point you have to draw the line. The game is over, the match is over, victory to Sweden.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So a World Cup is more sort of American style in that it's just an elimination bracket. Oh, there's a group stage and then there's a big elimination bracket of all the countries that qualified for the single limb tournament, basically. But the European soccer way of doing a league is just whatever team ends the season number one in the standings, they're the champion. There's no playoff.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, in European soccer, it's a round robin tournament where every team, there's 20 teams in, say, the Premier League. Every team plays every other team home and away. That's it.
Then what's the World Cup?
World Cup is a different thing. It's an international tournament
What?
that happens every 4 years. Yeah.
Then what are the Olympics?
Also a different thing that happens every
What?
2 to 4 years. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know where I'm going. I'm kind of running down a blind alley a little bit.
I'm already drawn the conclusion, which is like, neither do sports. Sports don't know where they're going either. They
True.
just go and go and go forever. But there's only, we have a year to play within.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and maybe that's that's kind of a beautiful thing, that it's just like, it is this thing that's both, games themselves are things that are like both consistent but ever changing in a way.
Yes.
Like,
and I guess that like to go back to my like thesis sort of is just there's like a big status quo issue at hand where I think all esports that I follow at least, and I asked like our friends who play fighting game tournaments and stuff, they kind of all just do the same thing. They're like, oh, double limb, first to 3 in fighting game is like standard. And like Counter-Strike, there's usually like a group qualifying and then it's a best of 3, whatever. And in American sports, it's all, make the playoffs and then it's a single elimination knockout. But it could be better if they just paid more attention to the differences in each game and sport is really what I'm getting at.
Like designing tournaments around like what is actually happening.
Like
in the
reanalyzing those 3 things of like, what's the point of the tournament? Like we want to determine who's best, but we want it to be nice for the players and we want it to be nice for the spectators. And all of those things lead to a different structure per sport.
To go back to our Dev Talk episode with Parney last week, you were talking about how Hearthstone is a great to watch game because of like the visual information is consistent for both player and spectator alike.
Yeah, which is really unique.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had a deeper connection to make there, but I sort of lost the thread.
No problem. Well, what I was going to say is that, so just to use the 4 big American sport, or we'll throw soccer in there too. Let's say the 5 big sports.
Thank you.
NBA and NFL, and I'll link to like a paper on this if people want to go really nerdy deep dive on it. But NBA and NFL basketball and American football have a much larger gap between the teams and who wins more often than hockey and baseball, and soccer's actually last on this list. So what I mean by that is the likelihood for the better team to win in football and basketball is much higher than the hockey and baseball, which are much more random game to game. And soccer
like
is actually the least of those. It's the highest variance.
It's the highest variant. Like it's like the skill set is like spread out.
Not the skill set, just the consistency of the top team to beating the worst team. It's just a less consistent result, if that makes sense. So there's another way of putting it is there's just a higher chance of upsets in soccer than there is in NBA. And that has to do specifically with the structure of the sport and how like it's very low scoring and anyone can kind of just hit a worldie. Anyone could just like randomly score a 40-yard goal and that's worth so much. Whereas like in NBA, anyone can't just randomly score 40 points. You have to be like the best player in the world to score that many points, if that makes any sense. But the reason I bring that up is because they should all have different tournament structures, in my opinion, because they're all very different sports that yield very different results. And so if I bring this to esports,
thank you,
a best of 3 in Counter-Strike feels really fair.
Why?
Because there's no snowballing in Counter-Strike like there is in like say StarCraft or League of Legends or whatever. Like within a match, there's so many mini matches and important rounds and tactical changes. It really feels like a thorough experience. It's not like in League of Legends, like if some team just like makes 2 early mistakes and these teams are on relatively equal grounding, the team like it's like a 75% chance that the team that didn't make the mistake is going to win the game.
And it plays out for 35
And it plays out for 35 minutes.
And you're just like,
yeah, and this is actually like mathematically proven. Like in League of Legends, you can predict the winner of a match with like roughly 75% accuracy.
Whoa.
Based on the gold lead from the first 10 minutes of the game.
What?
Gold lead.
What's a gold? Oh, just
like how much gold one team has versus how much team the other team has.
Sure.
And like that means like they may have not even skirmished once. It's just like how well they are at like gaining resources and like like just doing like little minor things that only ever even occurs in the early game. So that sucks. Like that might mean that you play a couple games and some unfortunate thing happens or whatever, and the game snowballs and it feels unfair. And you can imagine it's a very different experience where if you lose a best of 3 in Counter-Strike, there's not really a world where just like, oh, this one unlucky thing happened, screwed me for the whole match. It just doesn't exist. It restarts every round.
Yeah. And I have my own version of it, which is, you ever play Tony Hawk? Because look.
Yeah, Tony Hawk.
I like video game. I'm learning to like sports.
Well, it's the same.
It's all the same, baby. In Tony Hawk series, there are tournament stages in the game. And like the thing that this is resonating with me is that it only counts 2 of your runs. So you can have like a total dog shit run where like you lose your 200,000 point combo and you get like a 60. But if you nail the other 2 runs, you're good. Is that more akin to how like a Counter-Strike works?
No. Yes, in the sense that like one error isn't going to screw your whole experience.
Sure,
which I think, by the way, is like that's the same as how like Olympic skateboarding works and probably other Olympic events. I think you can like you totally bail and fall and it sucks and you just reset and you're just like, oh, that's my throwaway run, whatever, forget about it.
It puts a lot of pressure on
the next runs.
the next run.
Yeah, which you might get screwed anyway. But
hey,
there's just lots of different tournament types. I mean, are you familiar with bridge at all?
Bridge? I want you to teach me how to play bridge.
We could be partners.
What does that mean?
It's a 2 versus 2 game.
Cool. Yeah. Go on.
Well, in bridge,
sub cool. In
bridge, the most common tournament type that I've ever seen is called duplicate bridge. And what it means is there's an identical hand. So an identical distribution of cards played by different competitors. So let's just say there's 5 tables of competitors. The cards are in the same order.
Like everybody's
at every table
playing the exact same
hands.
Like it's not shuffled. It's
exactly. They're playing the same hands, and then the scoring is based on relative performance.
Who's the person that lays out the order of the cards?
I don't know. The tournament, head or whatever.
That's a drag of a.
No, but
like
it's cool.
Designing the order is one thing. Laying it out is the grunt
I
work.
imagine it's 5 shuffled. It's a shuffled deck that then is recreated for the other table. Yeah, exactly.
The shuffle. Is
I don't think they're putting in like, ooh, I'll throw an ace in here. See how they handle that.
Wild.
So the point of it is, right? So you remove the luck of like what you draw, or like, oh, I had such a weak hand and they had a strong hand, or like I was put in this impossible scenario. I didn't know what to do. Everyone is in identical situations. And then the scoring is based on relative performance. And you play against different teams and you never play the same, deck or hands more than once. But I think it's really cool. It's like,
well, I think it's akin to like competitor. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I was just going to use the League of Legends example again, where it's like, I don't know how you would ever do this in League or StarCraft, really. But I'm imagining that, like, if there was a way to devise a tournament where I want to see, let's just say it's the 2 best StarCraft players in the world, right? And what happens in reality is one guy snowballs one and the other person snowballs the other one. And then, the third one is kind of close and that's the end. And it's like, I don't know. Was that satisfying? Like, we just saw all we saw was like execution. We didn't really see like a big moments or whatever.
Yeah.
Where I'm imagining, like, if you applied duplicate bridge to those kind of games, I want to see who has the best early game, who has the best mid game, who has the best late game in different specific scenarios, right? Like
afforded points, like in those
yeah,
sections.
like I want to see Sean when he's behind in gold and has to play catch up. And how does he execute that compared to how the other competitors execute that?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's more interesting and more instructive in like who's the best.
It sounds more dynamic too.
I don't know how you would do it, but it's cool.
Sure. Yeah. Take it up with the league.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that's, the point is like, so NBA, the playoffs in basketball are 7-game series. Mm-hmm. You play the same first of 4, best of 7, first of 4 wins, right? You play each team. But NBA is a game where like you don't really need that many to determine who's best. They could make the NBA playoff format shorter and therefore a little more volatile, but without sacrificing that still probably the best team is going to win.
But Alon, what would the advertisers think of that?
Yeah, well, they would be upset. They would be upset,
Yeah.
All of this is to say, to start, go back to where I kind of started with the way that new Champions League works is they could just do like a March Madness style. Here's all the teams that qualify for the Champions League, and now they're just in a tournament. And I think it would be the most hype, the most fun to watch, the most volatile, the most crazy. And the only people who don't want that are like the fans of the best teams and the TV money. And that's the only reason they'll never do it. But like, it's so exciting. It's the best for time constraints, right? Single limb.
This is you speaking as like someone who truly loves these games, I think, though, right? Like, this is you talking about like, I'll watch anything. Or it's not you'll watch anything. It's that like the play of the game is the thing that's most interesting to you. Or do you find yourself...
but also the hype and stuff, right? So like the thing that single limb does better than any other format is it's really fast, it's really volatile, and it's good for time constraints, right? So like the way the Champions League format is now, it's like you're going to play 8 games in the pots and then you go to single elimination and you're going to play, 4 more games or whatever, spread across like 6 months or more maybe. But like a single limb March Madness style, hey, it might not always mean the best team wins. That's something that I'm willing to like give up. I'm willing to be like, the best team might not be the team who wins the Champions League. That's totally fine. But it's really fucking exciting, right? Like everyone in the US, I feel like, and I don't even think it's a stretch to say everyone has like loosely participated in a March Madness pool, whether it's like in school or like their office has a pool or like something. They're like kind of aware. And the reason is it's like fucking fun and crazy.
Whether you want to or not, you catch yourself like drawing a conclusion about like who you want to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and like to me, it's like I'm basically what I'm trying to say is I'm willing to slide the sliders to the entertaining the spectators being like my most important factor. Like if you want to just see who's best, that's a whole different like podcast of like, how do we determine who is the best third strike player? They would have to play hundreds of games to actually figure that out. But that sucks. It sucks for the players.
Data driven.
Yeah, like that sucks for the players, sucks for the tournament organizers, sucks for the spectators. It's bad for everyone. Whereas like, I think if we're willing to sacrifice like that core seed of like why any tournament was ever made is like, I'm better than you. Let's like see who's better at this thing. To the spectators and the players, I think you'd have a lot more fun if you just made everything a little more volatile, a little more wild. Anything could happen.
A little more playful.
Yeah.
All right, folks, there you have it. Suikalikes and tournaments. A flavor for every season, a stroke for every folk. Next up on the Wide Flank feed, we're going to be having a game club. This month's game club is Resident Evil 1. So you should play it, listener. And even if you don't play it, even if you've already played it, we'll be having that out for you next week. And if you are playing it, come on down to the Discord and talk about it with the other people.
What are you playing it on? You playing the remake? You playing the OG?
Don't get me
so
started.
many things.
We'll save it for the game club. But yeah, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Alon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.